we must understand that those used by God in special ways often underwent tests of their faith. This, in fact, helps us better identify with the people God has greatly used. If they always succeeded and had great faith in every attempted endeavor, most of us would be discouraged, not inspired by studying their lives. While God could give Abram anything he needed, what he desired more than anything was an heir. How could God's promise of making him a great nation ever be realized as long as he and his wife remained childless? Mentioned for the first time in biblical narrative is Eliezer of Damascus, Abram's steward or servant. As the patriarch's chief servant, he was the heir apparent should Abraham die without a natural son. With no seed, that is, no natural descendant, this was Abram's only choice under the circumstances. While he may have been Abram's most trusted servant, the patriarch was hoping for an heir born to him. Although Abram feared that his servant would be his heir, the Lord was quick to point out that Eliezer would not be the eventual heir of the great patriarch and father of the Hebrews. One coming from Abram's own body would be the promised heir. As Genesis 16 reveals, however, Abram and Sarai wrongly concluded that the way God will accomplish this was through Sarai's handmaid, Hagar. This, of course, was not what God meant, although we can all sympathize with the aged couple as they tried to figure out how the promise would be fulfilled. With the naked eyes, thousands of stars are visible, yet unaccountable. To illustrate how many descendants Abram would have, God took him outside to look at the night sky and challenged him to count the stars. So shall thy seed be, declared the Lord. Whether using stars, the dust of the earth, or the sand which is upon the seashore, God made it clear that he would keep his promise to Abram to multiply his seed exceedingly. God will likewise keep his word to us. We should not attempt to appropriate promises not made to us. This is a misuse of scripture and will likely lead to disappointment. Abram believed in the Lord does not mean that he was previously an unbeliever. It was his faith that moved him to leave his homeland in the first place. In reference to the promise just made to him, Abram believed. Abram trusted that God would bring to pass what he had promised. Because of Abram's willingness to trust God completely, the Lord credited him with righteousness. He was not righteous because he performed righteous deeds. Rather, he was declared righteous because of his faith alone. Two of the features of the Abrahamic covenant were numerous descendants and the promise of land. Descendants and the promise of land. But at this point, neither of these had came to pass, and the prospects of either seemed remote. Concerning God's promises, however, the certainty of fulfillment does not lie in human endeavor, but in God's faithfulness. The verses between the two portions of the lesson text, Genesis 15, 7 through 16, recount a number of significant things that occurred. As instructed, Abram took a number of animals, killed them, and cut the carcasses lengthwise into halves to be laid opposite one another. Verse 17. And it came to pass when the sun went down and it was dark, that behold, there appeared a smoking oven and a burning torch that passed between those pieces. On the same day, the Lord made a covenant with Abram, saying, to your descendants I have given this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the river of Euphrates, the Kenites, the Kenizzites, the Cadmonites, the Hittites, the Perizzites, and Rephaim, the Amorites, the Canaanites, the Girgashites, the Jebusites. Excuse me if I mispronounce those words. Why did God send these strange visions to Abraham? God's covenant with Abraham was serious business. It represented an incredible promise from God and a huge responsibility for Abram. To confirm his promise, God gave Abram a sign, a smoking fire pot, and a flaming torch. The fire and smoke suggest God's holiness, his zeal for righteousness, and his judgment on all the nations. God took the initiative, gave the confirmation, and followed through on his promises. God's passing through the pieces was a visual assurance to Abram that the covenant God had made was real. Most intriguing, however, is the mention of the Rephims, people of large stature. The word is sometimes translated giants. Centuries later, the presence of such people so frightened the Hebrew spies Moses had sent into Canaan that it delayed their arrival for 40 years. God made specific promises to Abram, promises that would be kept. Since we serve the same God, we have the assurance that he still keeps his word. Okay, now here is some key points that you should get from this lesson. Number one, God constantly assures us that we have nothing to fear. Genesis 15:1. 2. Believers can take their most difficult questions and stubborn problems straight to God. Verses 2 through 3. Number 3. No matter how bleak your circumstances appear, rest assured that God's plan for your life will not be derailed. Number 4. Our relationship with God is based on our faith in him, not our actions. Verse 6. Number 5. God's covenant is confirmed by his righteous character and power. Verse 17. Number 6. Seeing what God has done gives us confidence to believe in him for what we have yet to see. Verses 18 through 21. And I think the main verse of this lesson is Abraham's belief in God was accounted to him as righteousness. Hope you enjoyed. Have a good day.